On the economy, the Vice President-elect talked about having an economy that works for working people. One thing I didn't hear you talk specifically about is canceling student loan debt. Does student loan forgiveness figure in your plan? Would you take executive action to achieve it?
It does figure in my plan. I've laid out in detail. For example, the legislation passed by the Democratic House calls for immediate $10,000 forgiveness of student loans. It's holding people up. They're in real trouble. They're having to make choices between paying their student loan and paying their rent, those kinds of decisions. It should be done immediately. In addition to that, as you know, I think that everything from community college straight through to doubling Pell Grants to making sure that we have access, free education for anyone making under $125,000 for 4 years of college. And there is a program that exists now under the law that forgives student loans for being able to engaging in public service. I'm going to institute that fundamental change in that so it's able to be available to everyone that in fact is engaged. It's not being very well managed right now. So I'm going to do all of those things. Thank you.
And what is your message to Republicans who are backing up the president's refusal to concede? You clearly need to work with them going forward.
My message is I will work with you. I understand a lot of your reluctance because of the way the president operates, but I've been in contact with and will be in contact with more of them as we move along. And if it has to wait until January 20th to get actually become operational, that's a shame, but maybe that's the only way to get it done. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President-elect. And I want to kind of piggyback off of that. I want to get your thoughts on the president's tweet over the weekend where he first seemed to acknowledge that you won. Then he said he won't concede. Then he said, I won. How did you interpret that? And at the end of the day, do you want him to concede?
I interpret that as Trumpianism. No change in his modus operandi. I think the pressure will continue to build. Look, I'm having a lot of meetings with world leaders on the telephone. I cannot get into negotiating with them about things that are going to be done, but they're calling with some degree of enthusiasm. Everyone from the Holy Father to prime ministers across the globe. And so we're moving along knowing what the outcome will be. And as I said earlier, and I probably shouldn't repeat it, but I find this more embarrassing for the country than debilitating for my ability to get started.
And then secondly, I want to follow up with you on the vaccine. If the FDA gives emergency authorization to the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine in the coming weeks, will you get vaccinated? And if you're hesitant, why should any American have confidence in the vaccine?
Well, first of all, we'll see if that comes forward. And secondly, it's important that people who are in the greatest need get it. I wouldn't hesitate to get the vaccine. But I also want to set an example. But I wouldn't hesitate to get the vaccine if, in fact, Dr. Fauci and these two organizations, whether it's Moderna or Pfizer, who have been extremely responsible, conclude that it is safe and able to be done. Look, the only reason people question the vaccine now is because of Donald Trump. That's the reason why people are questioning the vaccine, because all the things he says and doesn't say, whether is it truthful, is it not truthful, the exaggerations. I think we're on a clear path now. We're on a clear path where the international community and national leaders in the scientific community have focused on these two vaccines. They appear to be ready for prime time, ready to be used. And if that continues along those roads, I would take the vaccine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. You have been urging the American public to continue practicing social distancing and wearing a mask, but with cases skyrocketing across the country, do you think that more governors should be closing non-essential businesses and reinstating stay-at-home orders?
Look, it depends on the state. What I failed to mention earlier is the enormous respect I have for conservative Republican governors who stepped up and issued mandates for wearing masks. In North Dakota, the idea, one of the leaders in this area has been the Republican governor in Ohio. In addition to the folks who've already been leading, like the governor of Michigan. The idea that the president's now existing, remaining advisor on COVID is saying that they should resist. What the hell's the matter with these guys? What is the matter with them? Resist. Every major individual of any consequence in the health field is saying we can save 100,000 lives just between now and January 21st by wearing these masks. It's going to take a while for the vaccine to be able to be available, distributed, and get to people. We're talking about 350 to 400,000 people dying? What are they doing? It's totally irresponsible. Irresponsible. And so I compliment the governors who stepped forward, who have been stepping forward, but also the Republican governors who stepped forward. I left out the governor of Utah, very conservative state, governor of North Dakota, and all the Democratic governors have been doing it all along. I just ask a rhetorical question. Do you guys understand this? Does anybody understand why a governor would turn this into a political statement? It's about patriotism. It's about being patriotic. It's about saving lives, for real. This is not hyperbole. It's about being patriotic. And I think you're seeing more and more as this god-awful virus continues to spread almost unabated that that governors are stepping up.
And just following up on that, especially with many states reporting new highs in terms of the daily number of cases and a lot of public health officials sounding the alarm over the holidays, what is your message to people who are considering, for example, getting together with their families and others for Thanksgiving? Would you urge people to reconsider their plans?
Well, here's what I'd do. Let me tell you what the health experts have said to me. And it's not because I'm unique and president-elect, it's because of my family. They strongly urge that if, in fact, we're going to have Thanksgiving with anyone, that we limit it to a maximum. They suggest 5 people, maximum 10 people, socially distanced wearing masks, and people who have quarantined. So Jill and I spent this morning, like many of you, trying to figure out what are we going to do for Thanksgiving? How are we going to do it? And we've narrowed down which family members and that they were tested, recently tested within 24 hours. And so I would strongly urge, for the sake, not just your sake, for the sake of your children, your mother, your father, your sisters, your brothers, whoever you get together for Thanksgiving, think about this. There should be no group more than 10 people in one room. Inside the homes. That's what they're telling me. They're telling me they're making sure that that's the case. And I have the more potent mask behind this one. I took it off when I came out here. I wear it inside this. That to be masked. It saves lives. And so, look, I just want to make sure that we're able to be together next Thanksgiving. Next Christmas. It is an international crisis. It's an international health crisis. And the idea, we're at war with the virus. And we're at war, for real. And all kidding aside, I hope all of you, I've watched you all seem to wear masks all the time when you're, and the group that follows me, that is assigned to Delaware with me. seem to do that. I strongly urge you to do it. There's nothing macho about not wearing a mask.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect. Your plan, oh, my mask is stuck in my ear in classic. Hold on a second.
I
Demonstrating
watched
for
Jill
America.
try to take it off.
Yes.
It's hard. Thank God I don't have an earring.
Your plan that you've outlined just now about 1 million union jobs, clean energy jobs, investments in HBCUs, those are things that take time. We have a problem with long-term unemployment that's growing fast right now. What would you do right away, specifically, to address jobs that may not return for months, may not return ever, including in communities of color?
What I would do, I would pass the HEROES Act. It has all the money and capacity to take care of each of those things. Now, not tomorrow, now. And the idea the president is still playing golf and not doing anything about it is beyond my comprehension. You'd at least think he'd want to go off on a positive note. But what is he doing? And there's virtually no discussion. And the Republican, we're told, I don't know if it's true. You may know, Senator, but there's 22 Republicans say they won't vote for anything. Well, there ought to be at least a dozen of them have the courage to stand up and save lives and jobs now. We should be doing it now, keeping those businesses open, providing the PPE, the protective equipment, as well as the PPP, the money that we allow people to get funding to keep their businesses open, everything from separation to testing to a whole range of things that allow businesses to open and stay open. That's what the plan was at the beginning. And by the way, if you notice in the very beginning, when they passed the stimulus program, the first two pieces, what happened? Businesses were staying open. And then when they weren't open, they were still able to make people able to get paid. But look where they are now. People are running out of unemployment insurance. What are they going to do? 20 million people are on the verge of losing their home because they can't make a mortgage payments. You have a larger number being kicked out and will be kicked out in the street because they can't pay their rent. And by the way, it's not just the renter, it's the outfit that owns the building. A lot of them aren't multimillionaires, they're running small operations. How can they do it? This is about keeping Americans afloat. Get them through this pandemic. Get them through where their businesses are able to come back. The money's there. The money is there.
And also on the economic front, as we fight the pandemic, world trade continues, and there is great debate over world trade agreements, international trade agreements. It seems that in the last couple of days, 15 countries, Asian, Pacific countries, have signed onto a new trade deal, the RCEP. Should the United States consider joining that trade agreement?
I've talked with a number of these world leaders, and I told them, under the law, I'm not able to begin to discuss with them. There's only one president at a time as to who can say what our policy will be. So I'm reluctant to answer that question now, but here's what I can say. We make up 25% of the world's trading capacity of the economy of the world. We need to be aligned with the other democracies, another 25% or more, so that we can set the rules of the road instead of having China and others dictate outcomes because they are the only game in town. And so, but what I'm insisting on, and what I've been asked by world leaders as to what I would do, without getting into detail, I've said, but I want you to know that there are three things that are going to happen if I'm elected. One, we're going to invest in American workers and make them more competitive. Number two, we're going to make sure that labor is at the table and environmentalists are at the table in any trade deals we make. And I'm not looking for punitive trade. The idea that we are poking our finger in the eyes of our friends and embracing autocrats makes no sense to me. And so, but I'm reluctant to get into more detail at this moment. I promise you I have a pretty thorough plan.